Take it in now. Page 2 of The Sun that you've picked out, and it says Plan B lated.
Yes, so this is the story that effectively the forthcoming compromise over Brexit, trying to break through the impasse, Theresa May trying to find something which is on the one hand agreed to by her own cabinet, but also something which might be agreeable from Brussels, has been delayed again. On Wednesday night, a meeting at which the cabinet was supposed to come together to discuss again the question of the Irish backstop and to try and find a solution to that, which is that they could possibly support, to then take it to Brussels to see if they could possibly support it, has been delayed. So it's basically raised the question of whether, on this backstop issue, we're actually going to get to the position of reaching some sort of withdrawal agreement by mid-November, which was always the agreed deadline. So discussion about kickstarting more no-deal preparation, etc. And I think really underscores the fact that the backstop question, as complicated as it is, this issue of what happens with the Irish border once we leave the European Union, how can we ensure that border is frictionless after we leave officially, has effectively looks intractable at this point, because on the one hand you have the European Union who only want it to be effectively annexed into the European Union at the end of the transition period, and then you have the UK say that can't happen, it must be UK-wide, but Brussels rejecting that, and it seems like there's no moving between those two.
I think intractable is a great way to describe it, and obviously we've had Theresa May. Some people seem to think she might not survive this week. Yet again, she survived, she's clung on, but this Brexit problem is absolutely not going to go away from her. So I think she's safe until at least March next year. But it's very hard to see how this issue comes to a resolution.
Indeed, and it's going to stay in the papers every day. So
it will, so we can talk about it many times again.
Looking forward to that already. OK, let's move to a double-page spread in The Times. They always do a world double-page spread, and there's the main part of it about Khashoggi's killing. The Saudis now saying that it was premeditated.
Yeah, so this is just the latest development in this kind of extraordinary story, and you've now got the Saudis saying, yes, it was murder, it wasn't sanctioned from the top, we're going to investigate it. And it really, in some ways, I mean, they were always going to have to end up somewhere close to this, get closer to the position of admitting that he was murdered, because, I mean, just the evidence, really. I mean, you can't sort of claim that this was some sort of, at first they were claiming it was a mistake that,
and then a fight.
And then a fight. So there's going to be huge diplomatic ramifications of this, I think, for Saudi Arabia. I really hope it does lead to a reset of the relationship with the UK and Saudi Arabia. There's been, a lot of criticism of that relationship, given Saudi Arabia's human rights records, given its track record in Yemen, where it's been partly responsible for the biggest humanitarian disasters of all time, massive problems with its human rights record. So, this must lead to a reset of that relationship.
Well, Theresa May has been critical, hasn't she, of the way that Saudi Arabia has handled these allegations and talked about the story not being credible, but there's no sign of any shift in policy, certainly as far as arms sales are concerned, is there?
Certainly not, because, of course, not only Britain, but much of the West sell a hell of a lot of arms to Saudi Arabia, and it's quite clear that not only that, there's obviously a lot of kind of geopolitical interest bound up in that in relation to keeping Iran at bay, etc. But I think what the Khashoggi case has really kind of underlined is just how morally untenable all of that relationship is. And also, it's just you get into this bizarre situation in which you have very important Western statesmen having to effectively echo, or at least not challenge, ridiculous positions coming out of Riyadh. First of all, as we were talking about, that it was some sort of brawl that got out of hand. Now them actually taking some responsibility for it. And increasingly it feels like this line that it was effectively just elements within the kind of Saudi officialdom who just took it upon themselves to do this seems to be the thing that's mirrored. And it feels like that will be scapegoated rather than it actually taking on the real issue of the Crown Prince's involvement in this.
Let's take a quick look at the Times page 1, because it links in. This is the Duke of York saying eager to work closely with Saudi Arabia. Let's quickly touch on that.
Yeah, that's right. So just as we're having this conversation about how this must lead to a reset of UK relations, we've got the Duke of York making a slightly awkward intervention. No sense of timing on his part, clearly. He was speaking at an address to young people to promote the success of his entrepreneurship scheme in the Middle East, and saying that he would hope that Saudi Arabia would join. And I think there'd be a lot of people sort of wishing that he hadn't said that.
OK, let's finally move on to page 3 of the Mail now, because this is some extraordinary photographs on this page, which make you feel dizzy just looking at them. And they call it the day Spider-Man conquered the city.
Yes, that's right. So it's a man who calls himself French Spiderman, makes it his business to climb without harnesses. He's climbed 160 skyscrapers around the world, totally like freewheeling. He's climbed the tallest building in the world in 2011 in Dubai. This is him climbing the Heron Tower in the city, though, and I mean it's just incredible, isn't it? But there is no harnesses, and it's just crazy. But there is a serious note to the story. The story quotes the city.
Yeah, there's a serious note. I can say it's very serious.
Apart from the risk to his own life that he's taken, but there had to be traffic stopped. They had to have ambulance services waiting, fire services. So this did come at huge cost to the British taxpayer as well. And I think the message from this article is don't try this at home. Very much so.
Absolutely not. But it's rather amazing, isn't it, as well, kind of pushing the human endeavour and pushing ourselves to the limits.
I think that's
as long
exactly
as it's someone
right.
else and not me.
As long as it's someone else, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah,
as much as we could kind of naysay about, how much trouble it might have caused in the city and traffic and, pulling out the emergency services, I think even though none of us might want to do this, it's nice to know that there are people out there who just have that little bit of risk aversion, have that little bit of a sense of adventure. I think there's something quite human in that.
Certainly adventurous. Anyway, on that note, we will leave it. But
I'm not sure that's a healthy level of risk.
Lovely to see you both. Thank you.